Hey everybody, this is Steve Galata with Brutal Residents, and today I'm here with Pavlo of Tineidae and Voidnet. I almost forgot your other project's name. We just talked about it like 2 seconds ago. How you doing, Pavlo?
Thanks, I'm doing okay. Glad to be here. How about you?
I'm good. I got a lot done this morning. I went food shopping and I bought some cheesecake. So I mean, I had a slice of that this morning. I shouldn't have, but I did anyway. So
That's pretty great, actually.
exactly. So do you like cheesecake? Do you have a favorite flavor of cheesecake?
I think like we in Poland have a pretty like specific cheesecake recipe which you
Uh-huh.
kind of diverge from.
Mhm.
It's like I've talked to a few people from US who tasted both versions and they said it's like much more, I don't know, fluffy in here.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I would say my favorite is just like the regular vanilla
Yeah.
recipe from
I always
here.
like to have a bit of like a strawberry drizzle on mine with a strawberry on the side and whipped cream. So, but I will admit that like, I in comparison to like store-bought cheesecake versus like when I go out to a high-end restaurant, and by high-end I don't mean like $200 dishes. I'm talking about like 50 to $100 dishes. And those are like anniversary or birthday sort of celebrations. I've been there and yeah, their cheesecake is a bit lighter, a bit fluffier and has a bit more texture. But and it has some of the best that I've ever been to. There's this one restaurant that we go to. It's called Top Cut, and it's a steakhouse, and we go there again for special occasions. But like when you order a piece of cake, they give you something that's like this big, tall, and like that thick, and it's supposed to be like shared with multiple people. So
Okay. Steakhouse with cheesecakes. Sign me up. I would
yeah,
love to have something like that here.
exactly. Like we get a filet mignon, and then like your dessert is a giant ass piece of cheesecake. It's great. So
Nice.
and it's like I hate dressing up, but that place has a dress code, and my wife always tells people that like that is the only reason why I'll dress up is for good food.
That's very good reasoning, actually.
Exactly. So moving away from food though, let's talk about Tineidae. Introduce everybody to the project. I mean, Brutal Resonance, we do cover dark ambient music, space ambient, however you want to say it. But not everybody in our audience really knows dark ambient artists. So give us a little explanation of what Tineidae is.
Okay, I will try to not make it long, but basically Tineidae initially started off as a ambient IDM thingy back in, I don't know, 2010 or so. Uh, there was a bit of like stuff happening which inspired me, like that there was Tympanic Audio, which is one of the rather famous at the time labels. Access to Arasaka. I still love what the guy is doing. It's like basically all those guys got me into making music in the first place.
Yeah, I kind of
Um,
missed Tim Panic to be honest. After they shuttered, it was so bad. Like because you don't really get that type of music elsewhere anymore. At least collected.
we yeah, we try to like stay in touch with the guys from Tympanic Audio. There was Ad Noisem, there was Hyman Records, there was like a whole bunch of labels which are, I don't know, I consider them to be like neighboring labels, label buddies, whatever. We're still staying in touch with some of the guys, and like some of them moved to ambient, like Subhaim, for instance. I too moved to ambient mostly. I don't know. It's on one hand, it's a bit simpler than the like glitchy, I don't know, intricate, complex layers of IDM, and it still has the cinematic feel to it, which I like.
Yes. All right. So I want to talk about my favorite album from Tineidae, and that was it EXO, I believe, right? That is
Yep.
to me that is one of the greatest dark ambient albums that I've listened to of all time. And I don't mean to like, put you on the spotlight there or anything, but to me a lot of dark ambient literally just sounds like a tugboat blowing its horn for an hour and that's it, you know?
I
So
mean, thank you.
yeah.
Thing is, like initially I was like, sometimes they have this uh idea of being not like any other guy. And
Mhm.
so I actually tried to get out of the conventional dark ambient sound. And this is like was the initial idea for EXO, basically. I tried to make dark ambient, but not being very ambient at all, because it focused quite heavily on synths, arpeggios, and it's like, okay, maybe it can be considered a bit more like space ambient, but also space ambient is usually feels a little bit more calm, in my opinion.
Yeah. I always whenever I try to describe that album to people, I always go to I'm not do you play video games at all?
Yeah, I do
Okay.
sometimes.
I sometimes I always point to like Dead Space. Like if Dead Space was an ambient soundtrack, that's kind of what I point to EXO as. You know, it hits the vibe perfectly for me.
That was actually one of the inspirations for the not for EXO really, but for we had a collaboration with Access to Arasaka and Soul Massive, that 4-track kind of EP thingy.
Oh yeah, I think I reviewed
That
that on the site.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's mechanical, noisy, blah blah blah. I totally agree with that. But that space was actually like the initial inspiration and initial iteration of the idea for that whole EP.
gotcha. Yeah, and what I always say is like different, like because what separates a lot of ambient artists from one another, I always group them into like three different categories, right? There's the first category, which are the ones that suck, and those are the bedroom producers who just like put out these really shitty lo-fi what do we call it ambient 30-minute tracks. And I remember I reviewed one, and all it was just like static from start to finish with just a very gradual pitch shift up and down, right? It was a nobody bedroom producer. That's the first category that I put it in. There's a second category where it's like really good producers, right? Like they have good production quality and stuff like that, but then it just sounds so generic for the genre. That's the other category. And then the third category are the dark ambient artists that are really good producers who can actually take the genre and elevate it into something more. And a lot of those artists are found on Cryo Chamber, the label that you're signed to with Tineidae, and that's because they have one, a good ear, and two, I'm not gonna say every release is like the most amazing thing that I've heard on the label, because there is some generic stuff on the label, but a lot of it's actually damn good, and it's one of the few labels that I actually pay attention to within the scene.
This is very spot on, man, because like I'll be honest, there was a bit of back and forth between me and Simon whenever I like first um sent him the initial versions demo of EXO.
Mm-hmm.
He gave me quite a bit of feedback, and there were like several iterations before it actually became what it finally released.
Mm-hmm.
Um but yeah, initially I wanted to go way out of the ambient space and try to. There was quite a bit of industrial sound, like distortions, like pretty heavy synths actually. But we kind of tuned it down, and I've actually listened to what Simon suggested, and it actually turned out much better in my opinion as a result.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Simon, who is the like label manager of Cryo Chamber, he has a good ear for that. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Like I will never what you call it, put down Crowd Chamber for the production quality, because no matter what I listen to on that label, it's always extremely fucking crisp. Like it's actually studio recorded stuff.
Yep.
So um but what's your opinion on the dark ambient scene as a whole then? Because as I said, it's very hard for most people to get into, and I think the reason why is because there's it's filled to the brim with these bedroom producers who think they're being either edgy or unique by just throwing in tape loops and saying that it's experimental. And I hate that description, because experimental is like a cheap cop out to say why your music sucks.
You got a point. I agree with you on some aspects. Like I try to treat it both ways. There is like ambient and there is experimental. That's like two slightly different, not genres, maybe styles to me
Mm-hmm.
at least. Um, yes, I do agree. Sometimes people use experimental tag just to like justify the um, not lack of skill, but I would say lack of vision or idea and the effort put into the production itself. Sometimes that happens, but at least I don't know. I I also appreciate the like slow moving, slowly evolving drones as well. So I can understand the point there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always that there is like production value in a long form drone or whatever,
Yeah,
but sometimes there is. And usually it's the small nuances like different textures, different small sound effects. Yeah, all that stuff kind of forms together the whole idea for me, at least. And
hmm
this is not the music I'm like actively listening to. It's mostly the music I just put in the background while I'm at work, because like this is the stuff that helps to focus better on whatever I'm doing.
absolutely. Yeah. There's been like many ambient albums I've listened to, or just even like, playlists on YouTube where I'll just like sit and listen to like ambient music, and it doesn't have to be the greatest stuff, but it's something that I can like I like to write fiction, as a hobby. And that's what I'll go that's my go-to right there. It's just to like listen to ambient music and just write some fiction because it just puts me in that mood, like something moody, something atmospheric.
It certainly helps to have this sort of a setup and bring the parts of your imagination to life, and you start
Mhm.
hearing, seeing things. Yeah, that's true.
Mhm. So going back to EXO, what you said that like because I mentioned that I imagine like that to being a bit of a soundtrack to Dead Space, but you said that wasn't the inspiration for it. So if not that, then what did get you writing for EXO in general?
Ooh, that's a good question. Actually, it was like the whole exo slash mothership thing
Mhm.
is I think is a homage to some more ancient electronica I was listening to when I was like kid in the 90s back in the day. Uh, and that's on one hand. On the other hand, there was like it's a memory of mine. We used to go with my father on night walks, and basically, when we were living like in a small town, almost village like, and there was like whenever you go out, there is no lights anywhere, and there's like huge space above you. You can see all the stars, all the lights, and it's fascinating. And I usually imagine those to be spaceships, like
Yep.
as a kid. Yeah, so this sort of memory inspired these two albums pretty much.
Gotcha. It's funny that you say that because I was the same way as a kid. Like whenever I looked up, like I think what happened with me is funnily enough, after I watched Men in Black for the first time with Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, whenever I like looked up to the stars and I would see like, obviously airplanes and maybe a satellite going through the sky, I would just be like, nah, those are aliens up there, you know? And
Exactly.
it's still a fascination I have to this day. Like what if, I mean, obviously they just had all those leaked documents saying that aliens are real, so who knows, maybe we'll meet a gray person soon.
Fingers crossed. Yep. But like even if we meet for some reason we still don't see the ships flying above our heads. So
Not yet, so maybe they're on a peaceful mission, because I mean, like, I don't think anyone would mind new overlords on the earth, but still, maybe they're worse, maybe they're better. So
who knows?
uh now, do EXO and the follow-up Mothership, do those two tie into each other? And is there an overall story?
I imagine there to be a story, but I kind of try to keep it more ambiguous so that like everyone listening can form their own, I don't know, conclusions, stories as well. Technically, as far as I thought about the flow of two albums, EXO retells the story after like whatever bad things happened to the mothership, and
Mhm.
mothership is more like a prequel, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah, I kind of got those vibes because I remember when I was listening to Mothership, there's I think a track towards the middle. I forget the name of it, but I think I described it as something just broke out of containment and it's trying to attack whoever's on the ship now.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
I always imagined like EXO being like, again, going back to Dead Space, the Isaac Clarke going in to explore what remains of the devastation.
Spot on. That
Cool.
was exactly the intention.
Hey, look at that. That you did good. So and what's happening in the world of Tineidae? I know you guys released EXO, you got Mothership out, and those albums came out what I think like a year or two apart. Um what's next for your project there? Are you on halt or are you still producing?
Uh, I'm going, I don't know, to hopefully put out another album on Cryo Chamber.
Hmm.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. It's not a solo, it's a collaboration album.
Ooh, okay.
Uh, yeah, we're currently working on that one most of the time, finishing things up. Like, I don't know, some discussions, some ideas, some changes, etc. Again, some feedback from Simon as well.
Hmm.
Yeah. The other thing is, I usually am always open to collaborations, and so I tend to like get over eager about those.
Hmm.
And now I'm having, besides the collaborative album, I have like 5 to 6 other collaborations going on at the same
Oh
time.
wow.
Yeah, it's and it's never ending. Usually, when you finish one up, there's like 2 more happening, or at least planned. So it's kind of, yeah, a constant process, but mm, to be honest, 50 to 60% of that just doesn't happen in the end. Like,
Hmm.
you know, everyone has their own intentions, best intentions, but it doesn't always work out. So, yeah, things are happening sometimes behind the scene, sometimes on stream. Sometimes, I don't know, lately I've stopped streaming because it's just too hot over here and my laptop overheats.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's going on. At least one bigger release is planned, and some smaller ones for sure.
Can you tell us anything about the collaboration album that you're working on? I don't want to get you in trouble, obviously, but can you tell us like who you're collaborating with or anything?
Soul Massive, the guy we had the three-way collaboration
Hmm.
with access to Arasaka as well. So yeah, it's the same guy. So we will have more mechanical sounding things.
Ooh. Yeah, I actually I liked a lot of the stuff that was on that three-piece collaboration because it was very industrial influenced in a sense, in my opinion. So
There was a bit of noise even, but
yes.
yeah, it's a bit strange, but kind of turned out pretty good in my opinion.
And then on the other hand, you also dive into we were talking about this before the recording began, but you dive into like a lot of mid-tempo, what some people would consider dark synth with your project called Voidnet. Tell me how that began, because I think that's a bit more recent than Tineidae, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, it's more recent. It initially started as there's a guy comforting darkness, and he's also from Warsaw. We had some collaborations, like, I don't know, several years ago. It was more of a techno attempt. It was okay. It wasn't something super duper fancy, but at some point we started together a new project, which was Voidnet at the time. I think it was 2 tracks that we made together, and then the guy said he's like not into that anymore, and so I continued on my own and then released 3 more tracks. Most of the time, it's inspired by, like, I don't know, in 2007, I think. Yeah, I was listening to the goth industrial stuff and
Gotcha.
whatnot, and it's like still resonances from that period of time, I think.
Gotcha. And with Voidnet, when I think I reviewed one of your singles that you did when I was doing that review everything, and I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it an 8.5. Um,
Thank
how
you.
how do you're welcome. How do you go into these the singles like in comparison to your more ambient stuff when you go to record? What's your process? What's your thought process?
It's total opposite, honestly, to if like with Tineidae and Ambient, I have some sort of idea or feeling or story I'm trying to tell. Here it's more based on the groove. Like, I'm sitting trying to figure out and I don't know, crank up some bass sound design thingy. Then I don't know, some idea pops up, and I'm just like going on that creative tide, I think. And at some point it flashes out and then becomes a full track. So initially there is no like concrete idea, whatever. It just happens from based on the sound design, I guess.
Gotcha. And what are your plans with Voidnet going into the future? Kind of like what I asked you with EXO. Do you plan on just keep releasing like little snippets, like a single here or there, or do you want to release like a full album at some point?
I'm thinking to release a full album. Actually, right now, I think it's 4 or 5 singles are out. 5, I think. Yeah. And there is still like 5 more tracks are in progress. Some are original tracks, some are remixes, and yeah, I'm I'm thinking not to release singles anymore, but drop the full album somewhere in the autumn. I don't know.
Gotcha. And do you have any insights into what we can expect on the full album? Are you going to be collaborating with other people, or is it just going to be solely Voidnet material?
Yes, partially collaborations and all that stuff is happening. Um, not too much, because I think like most of the collaborations are on the Tineidae side of things with Dark Ambient.
Mhm.
But yeah, still some of that will happen, and there will be some really cool dudes remixing the previously released and unreleased singles as well. So I'm looking forward to that. I've heard some demos and snippets. It sounds pretty good.
So yeah, now a lot of times whenever I hear like that, the mid-tempo clubby like dark synth stuff, I always say that like, I like to hear vocal collaborations as well. Are you gonna have any guest vocalists on the album, or are you just keeping it instrumental for now?
I personally enjoy instrumentals only, honestly.
Really?
I had, yeah, I don't know
Wow.
why. I don't know why, but somehow vocals, or there are some like voice samples, chopped up effects,
Yeah.
etc., etc. That sort of stuff kind of takes me out of the immersion. Like, I don't know, for some reason. Maybe it's just personal preference, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's kind of strange. But I like my things vocalists.
Gotcha. Now, is this just like your personal when you're producing music, or do you listen to other music that's actually has vocals in it?
Rarely, honestly, I rarely listen to music that has vocals. So probably it's just like kind of the way I like listening to music, I guess.
I got you. Yeah, no, I could do a mixture of both, but I mean, like, uh, I never like to trash the industrial scene, but every once in a while I have to because most industrial vocalists are fucking horrible. Like,
Dude, I'm glad you haven't heard the demos of my industrial project back in the day.
oh yeah, you had one.
Yeah, and I was also on the vocals, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't send any demos to you. So
I actually made a joke post a while back, like how I can really enjoy like a lot of synth pop music, like the actual beats are phenomenal, but then the vocalist starts singing. I'm just like, well, now I can't because it's ruined.
I can relate to that.
So
Like maybe that was actually the reason why I don't like vocals in general in music, because I over listened to those whenever it was on the rise in Ukraine, at least.
yeah. So um and honestly, at this point, I'm just gonna ask you flat out, is there anything else that's going on musically with either of your projects that you want to talk about? Because I think we covered a lot so far.
Yeah, most of that was about music. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, we
Uh,
we threw in some cheesecake there, but I mean, like other than that, been all music.
I love me some cheesecake. That's great.
Me too.
Um, no, I think about on the music front, it's pretty much everything that currently is happening. Yeah,
All right, cool. Let's throw in an oddball question. Maybe not oddball, but something different. I'm a huge movie person. What about you?
I have kids. I don't have time to watch movies. Sorry.
Okay. Did you used to have time to watch movies?
Yeah, it was like really back in the day before 2015. I
Gotcha.
did watch movies.
Musies.
Goddamn, movies. Yeah, movies. Yep.
Gotcha. Do you have any favorites that still stick with you to this day?
Probably cheesy, but Matrix, I
Matrix,
guess.
that's not bad. I mean, in all honesty, I always like to rewatch Matrix mainly for Lawrence Fishburne, because he's dope as Neo. Um, the rest of the cast, I just, eh, very
Okay.
for me.
Okay.
So I know everybody loves like Keanu Reeves in that film, but if I'm gonna watch a Keanu Reeves film, I'm just gonna go straight to John Wick anymore. So
Actually, this is one of the things we try to, because like uh we had 1 month when kids were at grandparents, and we tried to actually get back into watching movies with my wife.
uh
We thought about John Wick, but then we thought like, it's action, maybe she wouldn't like it. So I will try to watch it whenever I have a chance, but I haven't watched any of those movies at all. But people say they are great, actually.
Yeah, the only one that I wasn't too fond of was number two, and that's because it felt like filler content to me, but the rest of it's just like all action and it's just Keanu Reeves killing people. So I mean, like, it's dope.
Oh, Constantine is a great movie, by the way. While we're on the topic of Keanu Reeves, I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I remember when Constantine came out, it got like brutalized by critics, but it's become like a cult classic since then. You know, like
Yep,
everybody talks about it with good faith. I've never personally seen it, but I want to at some point.
it's
Um,
pretty good.
yeah. All
I
right,
think
man.
it has. Oh, okay, sorry. Go ahead.
no, no worries. But I was gonna say, I think we're about done here. You know, I think
Yep.
we covered a bunch, and you know, as usual, if you have anything else to say, I always like to put this at the end. I think I kind of already did this, but now's the time to say it. If not, we're gonna head out.
Okay, Constantine had the greatest Satan in all the movie industry, in my opinion. Yeah, that's it.
On a quick side note, I will disagree with that and say that Tenacious D in The Pick of Destiny had the greatest Satan in movie history.
Okay, good point. I agree. Yeah, second best then.
All right, I'll agree with that. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us again on the Brutal Resonance podcast. My name's Steve. That's Pablo, and we'll see you next time.